So welcome, Tulia.
Thank you so much, Merita. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I tell you here to your audience that we have been talking for 1 hour before getting started. So it means it's a good conversation. It's a good time. Thank you very much for having me.
I know, you're welcome. Yeah, it's been great to catch up. So yeah, we were scheduled this podcast interview an hour ago, but anyway, it's all been really good stuff. And what we've been talking about is going to be part of what we talk about today, which is why I know Tulia is going to share so much value. She is really passionate about seeing more women hit the stage, grow as speakers, have a voice, and use that to have a positive impact on their lives and the world, whether that be as a career, as a mom, on stage, whatever that may be. But and I'm going to ask Tulia for loads of her best tips around how to do that. Before we do though, Tulia, how did you become a speaker in the first place? Because I know that definitely is quite far from your original training and career. So how did that all happen for you?
It's very interesting, Merlita. But for your audience, you should know my background is architecture. So I study architecture and I'm from Brazil. This is why I left Brazil to work in Spain by the time. But life moved me around, and I always been a very curious person, which is part of my training as well as an architect. You are stimulated, you are motivated to be curious and to look for different alternatives for things. But to make a long story short, it was back in 2008. I was living in Barcelona at the time. And at the moment, I had a business with Brazilian jewelry. And, you know, I don't need to explain too much, 2008 and Brazilian jewelry doesn't match too much. So it was a very hard moment for me, and I struggled for 1 year until I had to finally close my business. And throughout the process of closing my business, it was the toughest experience I had in my life, because somehow since I left university, I always been a very determined person. I always, like, you can even say stubborn. When I want something, I really go for it. And life brought me through architecture to IT in Ireland, where I developed a very, very good career and a very good life for myself. And then I got into entrepreneurship, and then I moved to Barcelona, and then all of a sudden my whole world was taken apart, and I had to start from scratch. And then my question at that moment was what I'm going to do. And I knew I would not go to, there was no really possibility to go back to architecture, because I had left many, many years ago. IT is always a possibility. So that's what I did as a transition until I would get my mind sorted. But in this process of getting my mind sorted, the process of closing the business, together with the situation of the European crisis, or no, not European, international economic crisis, the people's behavior, I don't know, your part of the world, but at that time in Spain, it hit really hard. And people's behavior was a revelation to me. Because one thing I've learned, when there are moments of chaos, when there are moments of adversities, challenges, people take, who you are amplifies. Let's put that way.
Yeah.
So if you're a generous person, if you're really a person willing to looking for solutions, you will tune yourself even more into that direction. But if you're a person that you're more in the type of the complainer, the one that resists change, that you find everything is difficult, that amplifies. And closing a business is not easy. And one thing I realized at that moment, that is where the link to what I do right now, I had so many challenges to face in terms of my communication, in terms of negotiation. I didn't really know how to negotiate on my favor. Even if I had developed a successful career, and I had a successful business as well in Dublin, but everything that the environment I had navigated before was in a way that I could manage, I could learn in doing. But in a moment of crisis, I realized that I didn't have a voice. I was always trying to please people to get rid of the situation because I didn't know how to deal with the situation. But I didn't have this revelation at that moment in time. In turmoil, you know, you just don't. I was just trying to get out of that, to go through the transition, do something else while I had to close everything down. So in that moment, I got into Toastmasters International, which is your background as well. But I got into Toastmasters for the reason was to meet different people, to meet people that were not part of my nest. That was it. But when I got into Toastmasters, I met the people, enthusiastic, determined, entrepreneurs, people who are working on themselves, working on their communication, working on their leadership. Because I can tell you, I even received awards when I worked for Microsoft in my past time in IT for my leadership. But everything I did, it was very much intuitively. I know I'm a people's person, and I read some books, of course, but I didn't have any system. It was the intuition, yeah? So going through the Toastmaster process, and that really grabbed my attention from the beginning. And I started understanding certain things. And exactly what I mentioned to you before, I started looking back and seeing moments in my life that I could have had better results if I knew how to express myself in a more clear manner, if I knew to be more persuasive, and if I knew that it's okay to be wrong, it's okay not having all the answers, and it's okay if people don't like you.
Yeah.
Because one thing is that I've learned in this process, so Toastmasters was the beginning back in 2009, so it's more than 10 years now. But of course, I got curious and I started exploring. I started doing other courses, reading a lot, etc. But in this process, what I've learned is this: once you know how to communicate your ideas with clarity, because there's a process there. You just don't communicate it with clarity because you say, I want to communicate with clarity. There is a process there. And in this process is a serious process of conversation with yourself. So you have to reassess many things. We have to evaluate the context that you want to talk, that you want to present your message, to deliver something. And that process gives you an overview of everything, and you become more confident.
Yeah.
And then the moment that you step yourself out there, you are also ready to receive, to understand that also other people might not connect with your idea or might not agree with you. And it's okay to agree and disagree. And if you have to really fight for your idea, you have the elements because you have prepared, you are prepared. And that was the beautiful of this journey that I got so excited from the beginning in Toastmasters that some friends of mine started asking me, oh, can you teach me? I said, go to Toastmasters. But many people don't want to go to Toastmasters, you know, not everybody. And then it was kind of organically, you know, so I started sharing, and then by sharing, the best way to internalize your learnings is by sharing your learnings.
Yeah.
And eventually 2014, while I was living in Switzerland, was when I created the All Summit event, which you have been part of a few events, Melita. And at that moment, I decided to focus on women. And I decided to focus on women because I was living in Switzerland. I was seeing I was navigating in the entrepreneurial, women's entrepreneurs environment. And I found, I could see by that time that many good ideas, many great stories, many potential, it was not reflected because they didn't know how to express themselves. And then I said, everybody's there talking, oh, we need more women in leadership, we need women to speak up, but who is really giving these women this, teaching these women, supporting them. I said, okay, I'm going to be this woman. It was not an easy decision because I have to be very honest. I come from a family which is matriarchal, both sides, and I had enough of women in my life. So for me, working with women was always, no, I don't want to work with them. No, I don't want that drama. No, I don't want that. But then, fair enough, looking back to my life and looking what I've learned and taking, because this 2008 was a turning point. It was really when I hit down, really, you know, those moments of life that I don't wish it for anybody, because, but at the same time, as the old saying says, sometimes you have to hit the ground to be able to come up.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what happened to me. And to finalize, when you say, oh, this is so different from your background, in essence is, but you know, when you look back is when you know how to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And if you think that as an architect, what do? They're communicating your client's desire, no matter what it is. And one thing is of the good things that I've learned that served me a lot as an entrepreneur in my training as an architect is because there was one thing that was a kind of a mantra that we had in university was like, there was no such thing as an obstacle. An obstacle is always an opportunity to bring creative solutions.
Yeah.
So when you think that way, because I was trained to think that everything that's in my mind can become reality, can become a physical reality, which is even more challenging. So you have to find the means, the resources to make it happen. So this was always with me. And I know, looking back in my life, where every time I faced a challenge, it was never, wow, this is horrible. It was always like, how am I going to get out of this situation? Or how am I going to change the situation? So this served me a lot. And that this is the big connection that I find that everything I do, everything I've been through, how my training as an architect helped me. And the communication as well, because we communicate with physically. Our expression is physical, which also made me understand when I got into Toastmasters, or when I started communicating verbally, is a big difference than communicating in forms, in shapes and forms, which is what many artists, you ask. I have good friends, they are dancers, they are artists, and they cannot express what they do verbally. They have to dance or they have to show, because it's a different process. It's a different skill. So that was the in the very short nutshell, my whole story getting to the communication.
Thank you. And so many incredible lessons hidden within that. So let's unpack some of those. And I totally agree with you. My first business degree, I got it from an art school. I was in design management. So it was all about how do you get that clarity of between the project and what you're trying to express through and we did a module on architecture, whether it's to do architecture, interior design, graphics, products, whatever type of design it is. How do you communicate through that in a way that's engaging and valuable and creates an impact? So I really learned early on that whatever your goals in life, clear communication is the key to success. But it sounds very simple to say, but it's not simple at all to achieve, because there is so much that goes behind getting that clarity of purpose and vision and values and all of that meaning that you want to get out into the world, which is where I think a lot of people stumble when it comes to speaking up, because they have all of this, but it's not neatly organized. It's not clear to them, and therefore they cannot communicate that clearly to anyone else. So that's a big part, and it's always where I start with my clients is unpacking that and getting that clarity so that they can build use that as a foundation for their business, for their marketing, for their content, for everything else. But it's interesting, isn't it, how where we start is never where we end up, but it's only on reflection, when you look back, you see that everything was leading you perfectly to where you are today. And I have a lot of conversations with people in their early stages of business who feel not expert enough, perhaps at the early stages of their business, and even further into their business still have those feelings. But when you look at the experiences you have had, then it may not be obvious. So public speaker training from an architect, but there will be something that's led you to that path, because you couldn't imagine it if you couldn't do it. You know, it's like, I wouldn't imagine going up, like hiking up the Matterhorn, or climbing at the Matterhorn at the weekend, because it's just not skills I have, or I don't have any experience, nothing to do with that. So it's nothing, it wouldn't be part of my vision. But the visions that we do have typically are things that we are capable of moving forward and making a reality. So it's great that you've shown that, and that resilience, and I love the mix of your stubborn and curious nature that's led you to this position too.
Absolutely. And Melita, one thing I can say, and you said very well about the clear communication is the key for success. I even have used this in many of my marketing material. And also for me, the big revelation, well, in a way, everything starts from one. And we have the tendency to, when we want something to happen, we want that to happen out there, and we can benefit from it happening out there. But it's everything, especially in the communication, it's once you understand who you are, what exactly your voice, what exactly motivates you, why you do what you do, it builds such a solid confidence. It's not in the confidence in the sense of being arrogant, that I know who I am and I don't care about other people's opinion. But no, that gives you a peace of mind, and you feel relaxed about who you are. And also because you know what matters to you, you know what kind of message you share in the world, you know what you want to build around you, what kind of people you want to have around you. So the quality of your life improves at several levels. Starting from the communication with your closest ones, your husband, your kids. And I don't have children, but because you are aware of ways of communicating, because you are aware of the impact you can create when you say things in a certain way. And there even that sentence, like, it's cliched, but is important, and I repeat here, is saying that it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and when. And that is clear. It's, you can say whatever you want to say, then we come from the freedom of speech here, but you need to know how you're going to say it, depending on the context. Yeah. There's one example I give to my clients and my students that's very simple. It's like the same message when I am communicating that message to you, Melita, as an adult person, as someone from the marketing, I communicate it in a way. But if you have to talk to someone who is not in your field, or even if it's a child, to make it like the extreme, the same message for an adult and a child, you have to use different languages. You have to express yourself differently. Your body has to show emotions differently. And knowing how, understanding how you communicate, what kind of person you project out there. Because this is another thing, and you know that many people have no comprehension, no awareness on how they come across. Yeah. And then they wonder why they are not achieving. I even wrote a post the other day, and I said, I saw people talking about confidence when they were fidgeting. So immediately you see, especially for the ones that we are in the communication business as well, because you're in the communication business as well, we observe this immediately, and we know there's something wrong there. Many people might feel it, but without knowing, without having the educated knowledge to understand exactly what's going on there. So think about how powerful it is when you understand language as something bigger. I'm not saying about language, talking, speaking correctly, because English is not my language. I know I make mistakes, but I make my point. So that is the important thing. But also to understand your body, to understand how your body reacts to everything you say. Because I say to people, if there is a misalignment in what is said and what the body is saying, trust the body, because the body doesn't lie, because the body is where it feels what you want to say. And we need to be aware of that when we're in front of people. Is that what, like, this alignment, this congruency with what I'm saying and how my body is projecting out there is what brings my credibility, my authority, and what's bring my beauty, my greatness to the world, right? Because as in the example I said, if someone is talking about confidence and is fidgeting, so there's something very wrong there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we see this a lot of, especially in the corporate world.
Yeah, and also in the world of entrepreneurship as well. The number of times I'm out networking and I ask people, so what is it that you do? And they can't communicate their value clearly, and they're just fidgeting. And if they don't have confidence in themselves and what they do, then I'm never going to have the confidence to ask, well, can I work with you, or can I refer you to someone else? So it's really, really, really important to build that. And as you said, it's really hard to be confident if you're not clear about who you are, what you stand for. And so that's really the basis of showing up and starting to speak. And I saw that myself when I started my Toastmasters journey back in, gosh, I don't know, 2005 or something. And I was working in corporate at the time, and I started to have to give presentations at work more often. And I was quite aware that I could do a decent presentation, but I wanted to be like those people on stage where you go to a conference and there's one or two speakers and they really stand out because for some reason, you can't put your finger on it, but you really enjoyed listening to them and what they had to say. I was like, I want to do it like they do. And then I found Toastmasters and started learning, but I'm an introvert. I was always labeled the shy girl, and so it wasn't a natural environment for me. So it was 6 months before I got the courage to speak. But even during that time, having watched other people speak, having listened to their feedback and their evaluations, and thinking myself about what I enjoyed or didn't about their speeches, I started to internalize some of that and started to speak up more at meetings at work, in meetings, get my words out. And it was amazing. People started to listen and respond, which they hadn't done before, which made me realize it wasn't what I was saying, it was how I was saying it. As you said, I wasn't getting my point across with enough intention and clarity. And once I learned that, then everything changed. And even before I started to speak at Toastmasters, I got a promotion at work. And within 12 months, I was promoted and I was reporting directly to the CEO. And at that point, I was working in private banking in Geneva, which is a very male-dominated industry. And I wanted to use that position that I had to empower and inspire more women. So I established a women's network within the bank with a small team of other women in the organization. But it was all thanks to discovering who I was and finding my voice, and then finding myself then compelled to help other women do the same. And over the 2 years that I worked in that women's network, before I left to start my business and have my kids and everything, there were so many women that really transformed and got promoted. And there were men were invited to join that as well. When I asked them what they thought of the women's network and what it was giving them, they pointed out that it was the first time they'd seen women in a leadership capacity and the first time they'd heard women speaking up for themselves. And that was like a big eye-opener for me. So it wasn't that they didn't feel the women in their teams were competent enough to be promoted. It was just that they weren't confident that these women would represent their team in the various meetings they had to go to, and that they would speak up and be heard. So it was once they saw that, oh, women can do that, then the promotions followed very quickly after that. But I think we have to take more responsibility for ourselves to really take that first step and build that courage. And I've spoken to a few confidence coaches on this podcast, and they all agree, confidence isn't something you have before you speak up. It's something that comes afterwards. So the first step is just taken a deep breath, having a bit of courage to go for it, and the confidence will follow after that. But it's such an important skill for women to have.
It's for not for only for women, it's for everybody. I say it's called a soft skill, and I call it essential skill. And I'm a believer that if everybody communicated better, in the sense that really knowing what they want to say, what is the message they want to convey, our world would be a much better quality as well, because there was no need for certain kind of arguments when you know you know how to express yourself, and you become a good listener as well. Because one thing, and you said there, Melita, is the confidence happens after. Exactly. When you are in the process of finding your own voice, then you go out there and you are in the process of observing the people's reactions towards how you project yourself, towards what you said. And then in this process is collection of feedback and reassessing until you find, wow, why am I not creating the impact or the reaction I want? So you have to come back to yourself, to what you have done, and understand what is your audience, because this is a big challenge here for many people who are not trained and who are not aware. People prepare the presentation, they have good content, they have done a good job there, but they don't really know who their audience is. They don't really know what is the mental state of the audience at that moment. Who are they? What are their genders? What are their beliefs? What are their values? All of these are questions that you have to ask yourself before you're presenting. I give an example. There is a lady here who works in Airbus, who I coached her. She came to one of my trainings, and now we became very good friends. And she's a great storyteller, and I am pushing her as much as I can, because she has an opportunity to impact many women's lives, because she works in a big organization and she has the willingness to speak. But she said the other day she was invited to speak in an event, and she asked, because she even said, I remembered what you told me, Tulia. I asked them who was the audience, and they said, oh, it doesn't matter, it's just the people from our department. She said, no, I want to know who they are, what are their gender, what are their age, what do they do? Can you give them some information about their activities? What are they looking for? What is the impact you want me to give it to them in this presentation? And then they said that the person who, she said, the person who invited her was looking at her, really, do you need all of this? She said, yes, I do. And then the lady gave to her, she did her research. And then of course, it's spot on. When she went to speak, she was talking to them.
Yeah.
She was not talking to herself. She had a message to share with them, but she was communicating in a language, in a level, with the emotions, with the understanding that they had. So then she could connect. Because that is our job, is to breathe from where I am here to there. But I have to know what's there, no? It's like, it's as going anywhere. Where do you go? You need to know where you want to go. And then you decide how you're going to get there. Is the same for your presentations, is the same when you're speaking to people. We're speaking to people all the time with your families, especially when they are more, the closest the connection, more challenging, because there are more emotions involved.
Yeah.
So, and it requires more understanding of your own self. How am I going to say this to my partner that makes him to understand my point? Not even if it's like I'm enraged, but I cannot be enraged. And I want him to understand, why am I upset about this? I say upset because when we are happy, we are happy. But let's see, the challenges are when we have to do the difficult conversations, the conflictive conversations. And now we have a super challenge with this, communicating professionally in this environment where we don't see the eyes, really, we don't see the body, and we still have to connect.
Yeah, exactly. And you always hear people saying, oh, so and so didn't understand me, they're so stupid, but it's not the other person, and we have to take responsibility for that communication. And I forget who says it, but someone was saying, um if we all knew how often we were misunderstood, we'd all stop speaking. It's actually really difficult, but it's very simple at the same time. You have to have a clear purpose, know what your message is, why you're communicating right now to this group, what's that all about, and to know who you're speaking to, because it's not just about the information you're putting out, it's about how people interact with that. What are they going to do with the information you give them? And if you don't know who your audience is, you can never have that intentional interaction. You can never have any kind of results, because you can't have a purpose without knowing how people are going to, what's going to happen with that, and how you're going to not manipulate the audience, but give them the context and the information they need to take the action you want from them, or to think the way you want them to, or challenge them, or whatever it may be, your outcome. But it all starts with knowing yourself and knowing your audience, which is great business advice. When you're building your business, you can't build a business or a product if you don't know who you're building it for. And so it's all comes together. So for business owners, getting their story straight is going to really help them build clarity in their business too. The two go really hand in hand, I think. So I want to speak a little bit about business communication, because of course now the speaking world has changed. So you were helping women to become better leaders in their business through their speaking, or to launch their business through their speaking, and to do all of that. But of course, the stages aren't there for these people anymore. So I know you've had a bit of a pivot recently into helping people with webinars, and how to sell from webinars, and how to communicate clearly online as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How different is it online to being on stage?
Yes, and this was a very interesting pivot, as you said, because for me, I always use this space as a secondary. It was a complement from my business, but never as a core. And then all of a sudden, we are forced in a way to be here. But then, how do we interact in this? There's technology in between that we have to learn. There's entertainment that we have to add now that it was not required before, because everybody's now already talking about Zoom fatigue. So there is you putting yourself on a screen, seeing your face on your face, and many people having difficulties for that. So it is a big challenge, but it's doable. And my call to action was, I've been the past years always supporting women to speak up. And then all of a sudden this happened. And I got across a conversation from three women in the speaking business. And they were talking about what is the future of the female speaking in Europe right now due to this COVID, due to the situation. And it was very eye-opening for me, the sense that one thing that they said, that this was again an opportunity for women to step up and speak up. Why did they say that? Because they said all the big stages out there, all the big stars on stage out there, they also have to learn to use this technology to communicate through this here now. So this is an opportunity to get more women to finally to get some visibility and to have a voice out there. And all of them repeated over and over and over. And I repeat for you ladies out there, we need more women speaking out. So the process here for me is I taking from myself, which is always the best way, what am I going to do now? And when all this happened, because I had to stop and cancel all my live events. And then I had to get into this in a different, with a different view. Now I'm going to have to develop my business really through this. What were my challenges? Well, technology apart, is you have to be in love with yourself because you see yourself there more often. You have to then understand how you communicate and start recording that and analyzing yourself. How are you speaking? How are you presenting? How are you sitting? How do you feel? What is your energy level? Is a different energy level required? You know, Melita, today I will start this challenge and you're participating. I was thinking like, oh my God, I have to be fired up because this is supposed to be something engaging, which for me, doing it live is not a problem because I have this energy. But how do I get this message across, this energy across without being too much as well, because we are too close. So all these tricks of getting more to the background, the right colors to use, and doing it standing or doing it seated, and it's about also practice, but you can have guidance. And for the webinar that you mentioned, why doing webinars for your business? Because especially for entrepreneurs, our conversations for selling our services came to here now. So, and it became a little bit awkward, right? There were many people doing this for many, many years successfully. Then when I got into this process, I said, oh, hold on a second, all these big guys, these big names out there, they have been doing this successfully for many, many years. And you are also in the digital business, so you know that. But selling through here is a different story. And as everything has a process. So I got into this, learning this process and putting together a program for that to help, because I gave a presentation for a professional women in Zurich virtually on the topic of storytelling and storytelling for business. And one of the ladies said to me, but well, how do I place my offer at the end? And because it's always awkward at the end with the offer, I said, you don't place your offer at the end. You start your presentation with the goal that at the end of this presentation, there's an offer. So there is a communication that leads to that offer. So when you get to there, your audience already know. There is not a surprise for them. So that is the big difference. So there are different systems that we have to consider when doing this here, because the dynamics is different.
Yeah,
and we have to, yeah.
That's
Sorry?
great advice. Yeah, and you're right that it's like when's the best time to ask for a testimonial, and people ask right at the end, but it's much better to ask right at the beginning when people are excited to work with you. And
Exactly.
you know, at the beginning of the webinar, everyone is excited, they're trying to get orientated, so it's the perfect time to say, this is where we're going to go today, and this is what's coming up, and to set those expectations so that when you get there, to say it's not a big surprise suddenly, and you can weave that into the thread of what you're talking, to put it into context, because that's the point of the webinar, is to add value, of course, but also to set the context for what you do and how you can help that person to take that next step afterwards. So that's great advice. Thank you.
Yes, and it's challenging. Webinars are challenging because if you think about when you are in the presenting for a group of people, you are seeing them and you can interact with them, and by you know your content, you know the energy you want to bring, and if you see that something there in that corner of the room is not really responding, some group of people, so you can go then you can address them, and then you can bring them back to the conversation, or you can adapt your conversation for certain things that you didn't expect, certain reactions that you didn't expect from that audience, right? But here, with all these little these little faces, and some of them behind their picture, so this is why you have to ask questions, because you have to have the sense of the temperature of the people who are listening to you. Is a different technique. It's not bad. It's just something new for most of us that we have to get used to. We have to get used to ask those yes and no. And we might be wondering why people keep asking yes, usually a yes, right? To keep people engaged with you, because you want to make sure that you're also talking in the language or giving what they are there to willing to receive. So it is a challenging experience, but yes, as everything, we have to put ourselves forward and then see how we go managing.
Yeah, practice makes perfect.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and so much wisdom and value today with the audience, Tulia. If you could leave the audience with one piece of advice or encouragement, what would that be?
I will share something that I learned from Les Brown in the challenge that I was with him last week, which was amazing. The man has all the golden nuggets that you can imagine.
Love Les.
And yes, amazing. And he said, and then I leave this for your audience, for them to think. Someone else's opinions of you does not have to become your reality. So go there, find a voice and speak up, because the world needs your voice out there, especially now. And women, you are needed out there.
Brilliant. I love that. I'm going to put that in the tweetable quote underneath.
Good.
So thank you again, Tulia. I'm going to put all of your contact details and links in just underneath this video when it goes on the podcast is live. However, for those of who are driving, walking the dog, jogging, or whatever, listening to this, how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to know more?
The easy way is just go to my website, which is Tulia Lopes with s.com, and there's the contact page that you can subscribe to my to see some of my free training, so they get to know how I work, and they can see videos, me in action. So that's the best way. Also, my email is there, so then they can contact me directly.
Brilliant. Tulia Lopes with an s.com.
Tulia Lopes with an s.com. Yes.
Great. Thanks again, Tulia. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens next and to coming to your next speaking events and webinars.
Thank you very much, Melita. Always a pleasure.
Bye.